And we're going to go through a set of housekeeping, and then I'm going to introduce the rest of our panel. So first of all, this meeting is being recorded. We're with some live audience here today as well, which is great. And we're all being recorded today, so no swearing.
Listen.
So in terms of etiquette, of course, we need to have etiquette. As I mentioned, we are being recorded. Help our moderators by asking questions. It is an interactive session, so we will ask for, questions from the room, from Teams, but in the room, please, if you'd like to ask questions, join the Teams conversation and ask the question through Teams, where our moderators will basically feed us those questions. Also, please be kind and please adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct, which is available in the chat. So let's meet our teams. As I said, my name is Tricia Sinclair, and I'm the D365 Customer Service Lead at Avanade. I specialize in first-party model-driven apps and Power Virtual Agent, and also Power Automate. To my left, we've got Andrew.
We'll explain what she just said during the session.
Yes, don't worry, we'll go into it.
Hi, my name's Andrew Bibby. I'm the Customer Success Director at Proximo 3, and my background for the last 15 years is working with Dynamics 365, Power Platform. It used to be called CRM in the old days. So yeah, I do similar stuff to Tricia, what we call model-driven apps, and we'll talk about that. So yeah, that's my area of specialism, I guess.
Joe?
Hi, my name is Joe Griffin. I'm Managing Director for a company called Solar Cloud Solutions. So similar to Andrew, I've been working with the platform since the Dynamics days. Tend to get a bit technical on the scenes.
And Chris.
Hey, everyone.
Sorry, can I just say, Christopher Noel Hunter.
Listen, hey, you gotta go, guys, get 311 me, get my address, whatever. Anyway, so my name is Chris. I'm Avanade's Global Power Apps and Automate Lead, which is just the title. Actually, I'm a Power Platform technology evangelist, so I get to run around focusing on all areas of the Power Platform, not just apps. Power Platform, not Power App Form, right? And I get to do loads of things with M365, Azure, and Dynamics. So that's me.
Okay, awesome. So obviously you've heard that about our differences, about what we specialize in, and we have between us several years of experience within this space. Several.
It's Andy's got most of them, actually. I'm just
We've been working with the platform since its inception, haven't we?
Several years.
So.
Okay, so this is for you. What we're looking for is for you to ask us questions about, low code, no code, how did you get started perhaps, or even like where can you actually find information about this. So these are some of the things that you can ask us questions about. So please feel free, or shall we just start having a discussion? So firstly, what exactly is a model-driven app versus,
Shall we go through the components of Power Platform
yes,
first?
let's do
just
that.
To explore
let's
those,
do that.
And then maybe dig into what the app types are.
Let's do that. So
how many are there?
Oh gosh, you're asking me now since yesterday's or before?
Loads more since yesterday.
Okay.
I'll start at the top. Okay, so the Power Platform is comprised of Power Apps, and that's what we use for building apps of different kinds. Power Automate, which is an automation engine. There's a couple of different flavors of automation we can do as well. Power BI, which is for your reporting, your dashboards, that kind of thing. Power Virtual Agents, artificial intelligence chatbots that you can put on your website using customer service, various different ways. And the new kid on the block is Power Pages, which was just announced yesterday, which is the new update for Power Apps portals. So it's become a proper component of the Power Platform itself. Underneath all that, we also have Dataverse, which is the database layer in various different ways for those apps and those services that we build on top. Go.
And yeah, the other kind of core elements that live underneath that, other than Dataverse, because we all love a good bit of Dataverse. Don't know if you know what it is, cloud-based relational data storage facility. It is not a database. A database is a teeny-weeny little component of it. It is a service layer on top of a number of data storage facilities. You also have data connectors, the most important part of the platform, actually, because without data, apps, reporting and automation and virtual agents mean nothing. So we have loads of data connectors. And the other one that a lot of people miss out is this glorious little thing called PowerFX or Power Functions. And that's a low-code, no-code programming language. I really think it's funny. No-code programming language. Anyway, we'll figure that out at another point, right? But that allows you to write Excel-esque experiences or Excel-esque functions within your Power Apps and soon to be hopefully Power Automate as well. So that's your bottom layer, right? So data and functional language is really key in the platform.
And I like my special like area for Power Virtual Agent. It is a bot solution, but bear in mind of where Microsoft are putting it into. It's not just for chat bots. It's also a voice bot solution as well, which is typically used for IVR. And then of course, like we all pretty much have a background in what was historically known as CRM, which is actually a Power App. And that's where we talk about, the first party model driven app versus what is traditionally known as, the Canvas app that, is typically associated with the Power Platform. So, yeah.
So I'll briefly explain the different types of app. I know, recognize some faces from the previous session where we covered this, but we have, when we're building Power Apps, you build two different types of apps, at least at the moment. One of which is called a model-driven app because it's driven by the data model that you want to put underneath your app. So the data structure you have there, the tables, the connections between those tables, the fields that you want, and then you build your forms and your user interface on top of that. Now they have to be sat on top of Dataverse. That's how they work. The other type of app is called Canvas apps, where you start from a blank canvas. And you can completely start from absolutely nothing at all and start building your app on top of that. You can also use templates, which are available for particular data sources as well. But this is where those connectors come in that Chris mentioned. There's over 700 connectors now for all kinds of different data sources and services, either using Microsoft services, third-party services, even on-premise data that you might have in your organization. You can use all of that as data sources and services in your Canvas apps, and then you build the user interface exactly how you want it on top of that.
Cool. So we're starting to get some questions in. There's a good one here which I wanted to focus on for a second about Power BI. So can we advise on the minimum starting point for an individual or a small team? So I'd probably say on that one, you've obviously got the Power BI free, which you can use as an individual, which means that anybody can just get started with Power BI at any particular point. When you're starting to think about sharing content and moving into a sort of a Teams type scenario where you need to have a workspace and publish an app, that's going to be where you need to move to professional. And then from there, you then scale up accordingly to either a premium capacity where you've got dedicated compute, or you've now got the premium per user license as well, which has got the really nice stuff like paginated reports and stuff like that.
Yeah, the other thing about Power BI, I know I call it yellow Excel. Haha. Anyway, but you've got to remember, like this stuff has existed for many, many moons back in the days of Excel, Power Tools. And the most important thing when I always tell people, getting started with Power BI is a bit like an iceberg, right? The sexy dashboards on the top are roughly 8 to 10%. It's the data structure and the data modeling and all of that at the bottom. And Microsoft have got a very cool course out called Dashboard in a Day. I found it really useful. It helped me pass my DA whatever exam that was. Can't remember the number. It's going to make one up, 450. And that's the one. Yeah. So it's a really good way to get started. So as Joe said, start off with the free version. Do Dashboard in a Day. You can download it off the Microsoft website, and that's a good way to get knuckle down with Power BI. But please don't be under any illusion that Power BI is about dashboards, because that's the byproduct. The real product is the data.
And what you'll find generally across the Power Platform is that it's, if you want to just get started just for you, it's actually really easy. You've got like Power BI free, you've got the developer plan. Is it called developer plan?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Or community plan.
So you can get your own database for your own personal environment that you can use. So there's really no excuse not to get stuck in, I would say.
Spot on.
We have another question, which is from Allison. So Allison's built an app, but she wants to share that app for everyone in her organization. What would you recommend?
Do you want me to take that one?
Anyone?
Yeah, okay. So it depends on how many people you're sharing with. There's what I like to do is I like to create security groups. I like to put users in those groups and cluster them. Obviously, depending on what data the app lives on top of. You're a bit luckier if it doesn't live on top of Dataverse. You just have to make sure that app, those users have access to the SharePoint list as well. So sharing an app doesn't mean you're sharing data. So that's the first point I want to make, is that the app is just a veneer on top of the data structure. So number one, sharing the app, all good, no worries. You can just plonk some people into a group, share that app over to the group. You can also do it user by user, which I don't recommend unless it's small amounts. The other thing, please be aware though, is that, like I said, sharing the app doesn't mean you share the data. Okay, so you do need to make sure that that SharePoint list is shared. People have access to that SQL data structure, obviously through the connector, whether it's implicit or explicit. Also, please make sure that if it's dataverse, people are assigned the right security roles. Okay, like I said, Canvas Apps doesn't magically give you access to data. It gives you access to an app. A data structure is way different. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Now there's another one with regards to the difference between Power Pages and Power App Portal.
I mean, I can do it again.
I'll have a guess.
Yeah.
No, it's not a guess. It's slightly educated. It's just a new name, right?
That's all it
It's
is.
it's a load of updated components and a new builder and different sort of functionality that was announced yesterday, and it's a new name. And it now becomes, rather than it being one of the types of Power Apps that you build, it's now its own separate component within the Power Platform as a whole. So it's treated slightly differently. Functionally, it works the same, but now it's kind of a first-class citizen for building apps
It's
for
had a
external
promotion.
use. Yeah, it's had a promotion.
It's had a promotion.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And it's been given a new suit as
Oh
well.
gosh, yes.
Yeah,
The thing is that comes with the promotion because you got to look good.
that's actually very true. Yeah, I will
You
say.
got to join the big boys.
Yeah.
So the other thing as well is the licensing is the same. So that's another question. Right now, there's no change to the licenses of Power App Portals versus Power Pages. That might come later, but for now, it's the same thing under the hood. There's another question with regards to what are the options for protecting IP when sharing an app outside of the organization. First of all, is it actually possible to share an app outside of the organization? Secondly, what should be done and what are the considerations?
Well, this, unless I'm mistaken, aren't there certain terms of use in terms of if you build an app on the Power Platform, effectively as part of the licensing agreement, Microsoft can effectively learn and use components you built out. So it does raise an interesting point in terms of how protected is this from an IP standpoint, I guess.
I'm about to dig a hole.
Dig away.
I'm sorry for what's about to happen here. So yeah, that's one thing. But also when people talk about IP protection, they're also talking about the physical components inside a solution. Now, when you look at what's available inside solutions, number one, you have to have Dataverse in your environment to leverage solutions. Okay, so Dataverse is not all about storing data, it's about governance and protection. Number two, there are two types of solutions, managed and unmanaged. Okay, unmanaged solutions are typically in a development environment, your IP is not protected. Managed solutions, your IP is protected. Okay, now the reason I say that is because when you add certain components into a managed solution, things like model-driven apps, various components, plugins, things like that, you actually can't edit. You can build on top of, you cannot edit the physical structure. Canvas apps, you can still edit in a managed solution. You may think you may not be able to, but you can, okay? So you can open up that Canvas app and actually change the structure of it, and you can do the same with Flow. So you've got to remember, elements of the platform inside a managed solution from an IP perspective are not protected completely, and some are, like model-driven apps, Dataverse, et cetera, et cetera. So just be aware of that, right?
Okay.
I was just going to follow on from that by saying it really depends on your use case. It depends on the type of people that need to access whatever IP you're building. I think personally, particularly for scale, if you want to have external users access some kind of app that you've built, portals or Power Pages is probably a good option for you. Because that's what it's for, building intranets, extranets, and public-facing websites. So, and through that, you would get that protection of IP, I would suggest.
Yeah. There's one thing though, like in terms of I think there's a difference between sharing with model-driven or giving people access to the app on a model-driven app versus a Canvas app.
Totally different. Model-driven are meant to be process-driven user experiences on top of data. You don't really want to edit those. Canvas are meant to act as templates for people to change. That's the whole concept of citizen development. That's the whole reason we build using tools like components, snapping them into Canvas apps so that effectively the components are non-editable, but the app is. So there's nothing wrong with Karen and accounts copying a Canvas app, say that really fast, by the way, and then really moving those controls around, because actually the real intelligence of the Canvas app, if you build it right, is not in the app, it's in the data.
Correct. Now there's another question, really interesting one, which is about collections. So do you think collections are more efficient?
No.
At performance than filtering from the connected data source?
I would say that it's more about whether or not the data source supports delegation, probably. That's going to be a key consideration there. So just to explain, certain data sources that you use from a Canvas app standpoint will support delegation. What that effectively means is that what you do from an app standpoint will then be applied against the data source. So for example, if you connect into something like a SQL Server database, instead of doing select all from table each time, it'll adapt it behind the scenes sort of natively and do select column 1, column 2, where blah, 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 order by, and make the query more efficient. So definitely always try and use dedicated data sources, of which Dataverse is one. SharePoint supports some delegations, a handful of others as well, isn't there, I think?
Dataverse is the most delegable data source.
Exactly.
That basically means taking the pressure off of the app and putting it into the data. You don't want to compute front end. That's not a good idea. It makes performance ridiculously bad. Compute back end. But just on that, what people do, and we find it a common strand in Canvas app builds especially, is that people will use collections as a data transmogrification tool. And what I mean by that is that they change the data so much in the collection, patching it back up to the data structures becomes a problem, and even less performance, right? So instead of what I use collections for is things like offline functionality. Also, if I'm doing multiple patches back up to several data structures, it's a really good tool, but it's not meant for data transformation.
Okay, so we have a question related to a SharePoint list. So basically,
Our favorite data source.
Aaron.
yeah, so the question is, sorry, I'm just trying to go back to it. Sorry about this.
I think, sorry, you had it then for a second. Let me just try and find it. Yeah, so here we go, this one here.
Yeah, so basically, Mohammed basically wants to use Power Automate to create items in SharePoint where the initiator or the triggered user doesn't actually have access to SharePoint. Now, this is more of a technical how question.
So the triggering user doesn't have access to the SharePoint list. Yeah. It's not going to work. Yeah, I don't know. I could. There are probably some anomalies around that could be explored, but like I don't know the answer direct.
Yeah, so there you go. So just thought I'd ask.
We don't
know. So the thing is, this is all great and well, but how can someone actually get started? How can someone actually start their own journey into the Power Platform? Where should they start, and how should they do it?
Well, I think we've mentioned it on the slide here, but I think the Microsoft Learn site has actually come ahead of a long way. So before it used to be very difficult to actually get trained up without having to fork out, £6,000 for a course, wasting 5 days of your time and all that sort of stuff. Well, not wasting, but shouldn't have said that, but never mind. Now instead we've got the Learn site. So effectively you can learn at your own pace. So maybe learn in the evenings, so you're not sort of taken away from the day job. You've got like modules, you've got videos, quizzes at the end, and basically any Microsoft exam these days you can use the Learn site to prepare for as well, which is really nice. So definitely start off with Learn.
And also Microsoft Docs. And for me, like one best way to do it is by trying to figure out like your own personal problems as well with the Power Platform. It's always useful. And then you can take that into the business.
Yeah, I'm going to defend training. Sam.
Yeah, I'm an MCT. I should add, by the way.
Yeah, I think training has a place depending on how you learn, and if you struggle to dedicate time to learning yourself, which I do, because there's always something better to do, isn't there? But it can be a very effective way to learn and prepare for exams as well. So I think training is a good option. Also, and Chris mentioned dashboard in a day earlier. Microsoft actually have a set of in a day type training courses which really allow you to get hands-on with the tools. So there's app in a day, dashboard in a day. Is there Power Automate in a day?
Yeah,
there's Power Automate. There's also PVA in a day. Don't forget. Everybody keeps forgetting PVA.
Because they didn't call it Power Bots, but that's probably because Michael Bay stole the name. So yeah.
So you can have somebody come in, maybe from a partner, or you can attend. So Microsoft run these in-a-day events as well regularly. Attend one of those, and they really allow you to get your hands on the tools, learn particular areas. They take you through the different components of the Power Platform, and at the end of it, you've built something as well. So you can see how productive you can be in just a day, and that really gives you a taste of what's possible. Obviously, then there's more work to do on top of that, but maybe that gives you a focus of where you would like to explore more. Are you a Power Automate person, or an app builder, or Power Virtual Agents maybe?
I have a really interesting question. This goes for all of you. What's the most innovative thing that innovative solution that you've built using the Power Platform?
Heavens.
Put everybody on the spot.
I work with financial services, generally not very exciting projects. Yeah, and also non-profit. So, innovative, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but yeah, big scale, thousands of users, and that's definitely easy to do with Power Platform. Scale to that number of users and still get very good performance.
Yeah, I built some pretty interesting Canvas apps in terms of, and usually trying to migrate away from things like access and stuff like that. So those have been some quite interesting scenarios, and just seeing how easy it is actually to translate it across has been quite interesting, I'd say.
I genuinely can't answer it, like without kidding, because I think on a day-to-day basis, one of the things I'm lucky enough to see with multiple organizations is never the concept of just an app. We get to see a lot of people building some pretty crazy things using artificial intelligence. One of my favorite sayings in the entire world is the best user interface is no user interface. And I think like that's probably one of the coolest things I've been part of building. It wasn't just me, but yeah, actually refining the way in which people interact with data. So absolutely scrapping the app layer completely and saying, hey, you don't need to use this. Like, why don't we just automate everything, infuse it with AI, infuse it with automation, and actually make your job a billion times better? But as they say, simplicity on the surface is complexity in the foundation. So to answer, I can't give you the exact solution, but I can tell you that that's definitely the most innovative thing I've seen done, and I was lucky to be part of.
So basically, you've built a solution that doesn't have a UX, but is really, really automated to reduce everybody's effort and time.
Yeah, think about it as taking the robot out of the human. I feel like that's the most important thing we should be doing now. So instead of focusing on everyone plugging data away and putting in pointless stuff, automating as much as we can to make sure that people have the ability to do this rather than stick data in spreadsheets all day. So like that is the goal, I think, of the Power Platform, is to remove the robot from the human and make people's lives a lot easier.
So you're talking about removing, making people's lives easier and basically removing the bot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? But we do a lot of that with Power Automate. Power Automate to me is like the linchpin of the Power Platform, right? How do you think there's going to be any enhancements to Power Automate? Do you see where it can go in the future?
I think the best way of seeing where, and we're talking about Cloudflows here specifically, just look at what's happening on the Azure side with Logic Apps, because fun fact, underneath the hood, your Cloudflows are using the same technology there. So anything that happens or is developed on that side, you can probably expect will come to the Power Platform at some point. For the other tools, there's probably going to be their own separate
I think
pathways and stuff, aren't they?
It's quite difficult to say because it's kind of in Microsoft's control over what functionality they would release for Power Automate. But I think there's been a lot of investment in desktop flows. So there's two types of flows: Cloud Flow, which runs in the background, desktop flows, and there were some announcements about that yesterday around what's called robotic process automation, RPA, and using desktop flows and really scaling those to enable organizations to use potentially thousands of these machines working in the background to automate a lot of things that people do very manually at the moment, so that those people can do something far more interesting instead, which is kind of like what Chris is saying. We're a slave to the spreadsheet now. Most companies are run on spreadsheets, aren't they? And so, why not get some more intelligence and automation into this?
Do you think that they're going to make it easier to query, like basically enhance the querying capabilities?
That will depend on the connector type, wouldn't it? More than anything, I would say.
I feel like two things have to happen with Automate to make it more successful. Is number one, I'm going to be in so much trouble for what I'm about to say, but rid us of that awful expression language and put Power FX in there. That would be the first thing.
That's got to happen though, right?
Yeah, mate. Flow, like just doing a date query and a date update on flows like that being, man, it's even using the connector is still painful. So for me, that's been my blocker. The second thing they need to do is they need to start baking in the connectors a bit more into Flow, I think, like the way the actions are used and, especially things like parallelism and all of that. Like, I feel as if with Flow, a lot of the time, people use it as an integration tool. It's called Power Automate, not Power Integrate, right? So we have to become more clear about what we're doing with it. It is a business process engine. So I feel like if we focus on that more and less on the data transformation side, the message will be clearer. So I feel like that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, this we talked a lot today about how we can definitely use apps, how we can automate and create a lot of efficiencies, right? When do we, sorry, we talked about apps, we talked about Canvas apps, and this is a personal question for me, and I'm going to ask you.
All right.
Because you know exactly what I'm going to say to you.
I know, but I'm still asking it anyway, right? When do we change it from a Canvas app to start looking at a first party model-driven app? When does it become necessary to do that?
Yeah, so Canvas apps are the direction that Microsoft give you is Canvas apps are task-based. You know, if you need to take details from somebody as they walk into your store, or you need to, perform something that's quite short in terms of its business process, Canvas apps work really well for that. As soon as you start having to build many Canvas apps or even a lot of functionality into a single Canvas app and try and have lots of different navigation that you need to go swapping around different pages, and you've got longer business processes, you may want to start looking at a model-driven app for that, because that's much more suited to those types of requirements, I would say.
The thing I find is that people tend to bulk at the licensing costs for something like Dynamics 365 customer service sales, but then they don't fully appreciate the amount of time and effort it's going to take individuals in the organization to then maintain that solution as a consequence of going down the custom development route. It just doesn't ever seem to put two and two together. So certainly when you're wanting to be a bit more agile, when you're wanting to have that reliance on, somebody having to maintain the solution, update it, certainly that's going to be a good place for you to start considering a first party app.
Yeah. Right. So licensing.
Favorite topic.
No.
We have got a question we can finish with.
Well, it is.
No,
30 seconds.
No, we can't finish with a licensing question.
Well, I can bake it. I can bake it into what I can say really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically, think about it like this: you can rebuild any CRM or CE app inside the Power Platform. There's no multiplexing problem there at all.
Yeah.
Okay. You can categorically do that. The licensing guide says you can. You can even use Dynamics 365 entities that are non-restricted inside Canvas apps without paying a Dynamics license. Okay, it says it in the licensing guide, read it if you want. But ultimately, here's the thing. Dynamics is never going to die. And the reason is because Microsoft basically built in two entire campuses on Dynamics. Okay, the amount of IP that lives in customer service, marketing, sales, and field service is huge. More so field service, marketing, and customer service than sales. But there's a lot of IP in there. Microsoft have bled on that stuff. So yeah, it's not going away, but people don't understand that actually building that from scratch is going to take you more time. Build over buy. It's that simple. So yeah, it's worth paying the 60 whatever bucks a month for the license for the person using that tool.
Yeah.
Okay, so any last words?
Licensing. No, I'm done.
I think about like getting started really. There's a huge amount of information available to you. So I wouldn't, I do this every day. Any problem you have, Google it and you will find
Bing
answers
it.
to your question.
Bing it.
Bing, yeah, Bing it. He didn't mean Google. Bing.
I always change from Bing to Google, so assume. Yeah, there's always a lot of information out there. There's lots of YouTube videos. There's lots of good channels out there for Power Platform, the different areas of Power Platform. Come to user groups. Come to the community where you can really learn from each other. Everybody is on a journey. Everybody knows something, even if you think you don't know very much. Everybody's got something to share. So I really encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
Come to Scottish Summit in a couple of weeks' time, which is in Glasgow. That is a massive conference that's happening. It's completely free. Come and learn from people like us, and obviously people in this room actually as well, about these different topics.
It's in Scotland.
No, stop.
But as a final word, what I will say, the business applications community from Microsoft side is simply outstanding in terms of the individuals there, in terms of the people who will help you and support you. So do get involved, definitely.
Cool.
And Chris?
No, I'm done.
Okay, great.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Genuinely, you
Chris
rock.
is done. So basically, my last words are: it's literally what the guys have already said. If you have a problem, it's really understanding what the problem is, understanding what the Power Platform can do for you, and then again understanding how to piece it together. But literally, there's so much information out there. Microsoft Learn, Binging, contacting people who've actually done it before, chasing them out. People will talk to you. Don't worry about that. People will talk to you.
Yes.
So yeah, that's really what we wanted to talk to you about today. And I really want to thank you all for coming to our session, joining our session, and I really hope you found it useful. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.